part of District 2, which is the Lakes region, and so we're excited to be part of this evening.
So we're going to go over a slideshow, kind of explain, number one, Lakes Region Search and Rescue, about when we were formed, and a little bit of our background. Then we'll go into a little bit about Search and Rescue in New Hampshire and kind of take you through that process. And at the end, we'll have questions and answers. As we're going through, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask questions while we're going through. So we were actually formed in 2019. I don't know if anybody remembers, February of 2019 on Mount Major, there were 2 simultaneous rescues. One of them was a man that fell 200 feet on ice there, had a head injury. They shut down Route 11, dart copter landed. And then at the same time they were rescuing him, there was another woman that fell, had a leg and hip injury. So there were 2 simultaneous rescues, which prompted a need for District 2 to have their own search and rescue team, and that's how we came about. So I've been with the organization since we started, so I was one of the people that helped get us going. So we started off as a 3-season team. So we would do spring, summer, fall. We didn't do winter up until last year. We started a winter team. So we now do all 4 seasons. Our first year, we got close to 70 volunteers. We now are about 76 members on our team, so, which is great. So we respond for a need for wilderness search and rescue missions in the southern White Mountains and the Lakes region in New Hampshire. That's not to say that that's the only area we go. We really go all over New Hampshire. We go wherever Fish and Game calls us to go. You can go to the next slide. So we're a nonprofit organization, and we're also 501c3 status, which means when we get donations, they're tax deductible, but our organization, we only receive money from donations, fundraisers, or grants. So we don't get any other funding by that. Nobody on our team is paid, we're all volunteers. We have a lot of expenses, believe it or not. So we have our dispatch system, we have all of our Google accounts, team t-shirts, trainings, equipment, website. Those are just some of the expenses that we have. So our donations and fundraisers and grants do help support all that. So this is just a little bit of our training. So every year, I'm also the training chair, so I run the training committee with us. So every year, in the springtime, we put out our training schedule for the year. And this just kind of looks like, this is a little bit of what our training looked like this past year. So in the springtime, we usually have a training around, usually April. I think this year it might have been May.
It might have been May, because, yeah.
So usually April every year is when we start for our training. And then we've been doing them in Holderness lately. And that's usually the first time our team comes together for the season. And it's a full day training. This year we did,
Full day.
It was a full day, and it was really about a missing person. Usually, depending on who's running the training, this one, Lieutenant Morris ran, so he kind of did the training plan for it. So it was a missing person, a really crazy scenario. We won't go into it. We were split into 5 different teams, and our job was to go out and search different areas and find whatever clues we could and whatever, and eventually, being successful, which we were, we needed to find the patient, which we did find. Mm-hmm. So we go through that, and then summertime, we did carry out practice. We did that. We usually do it every year on Piper Mountain, because it's kind of a lot of ours backyard, and it's a great spot. And that's basically, the team comes together, it's all hands on, we go up there, we package a patient, and we carry down the mountain just for practice. And then we did a map and compass training where we only had 8 members go to that because you need a smaller group, and that's really, we had received a grant, and one of our grants was to purchase GPS units. So we were able to purchase 5 GPS units this year. The purpose behind getting these is so that way we can act more by ourselves. So when Fish and Game calls us and there's a missing person, we can disperse into smaller teams with our GPS units and be able to cover a larger area in a faster time in the hopes that we find who we're looking for faster. So it allows us to do that. So because of that, we all need training on how to use these correctly.
And then to partner with that, so I carry an InReach, so I actually went to the Map and Compass so that I learned how to better use my InReach, because that's what I'm going to have with me, and I am one of the team leads. So I was able to take the skills I learned in that, put it towards my inReach. I'm actually teaching an inReach class this weekend for our team to go over anyone else that would have this with them. So we can kind of partner the two different GPS units.
So and the GPSs come in handy too if we're out on missions looking for people where we can give our coordinates. There's times where we can be out on a call and command, which is somebody from Fish and Game, will usually call us on the radios and let us know we need you to go to these coordinates. So you gotta be able to plug in the coordinates in the GPS, and you've gotta be able to get yourself to where they want you to go. So that was another one. And then we had our all hands on training, and that is this year it was in September, and that's when all search and rescue teams in the state of New Hampshire and New Hampshire, it's not New Hampshire, K9, the K9, because they cover all of New England. New England K9 comes, and we all get together and we have one big annual training every year, and that was at Cannon Mountain. So that was great. Do you know how many people showed up? 100 and.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
It was bigger
Yeah.
than last year for sure.
It might have been like about 120 or 130 people showed up for that training. And during that training, you can divide out, there's different classes you can take, so that way you're not all in the same class. They give you an itinerary and you can pick which classes you want to go to. We do that in the morning time. Everybody splits into different teams. You go to the classes you want to go to, and then in the afternoon we all train with the New Hampshire National Guard, and they bring the Black Hawk in, and we have training for the afternoon with them. Sometimes they get called out on call while we're there and they have to leave, but a lot of times they've stayed. And then fall time, we actually just had our fall one in September. And that one we did two missing people. We did a missing child and a missing adult with them. So we split into 5 teams and had the teams have to go out and find them. So, and generally with a missing person, you're not gonna find them on trail. They're usually off trail. So our team was successful. They found them, so that was good. And then we have Sunday training coming up. We have hypothermia training on this coming up Sunday. So that just kind of gives a little bit of the training. We tend to throw different trainings in here and there as we can, but that's kind of an outline of what our training looks like for the year.
Alright, so I'm going to cover what happens from the time someone calls for help and then from being rescued. I actually am also on our dispatch team, so I kind of have a little bit of insight to this process just because I've received some of these calls from Fish and Game. So essentially there is a line of communication. So there's a person in distress. Normally they call 911. Depending on what tower you hit, it might be that the call has to be transferred. And then Fish and Game is notified. From there, depending on where you're located and the availability of the teams, they will then call the dispatch team lead or team member that's, doing it for that weekend. We have a great dispatch team lead. I'm a backup. So what would happen is you would then call out to the team. We use a online system, and then people will notify via the telephone whether or not they can attend. And then we use it's called WhatsApp. It's the application on your phone, and we communicate in there. So saying this is what time I'll be there. He will normally put a link of a map so you can see how far it is from your location, so you can give an ETA. Some of the trails are not always known, the trailheads, so it's good to have that as well, especially when you're going on a call. And then based on how many people say yes or no that they're going to attend, we'll relay that to Fish and Game, and then from there we'll make a decision as to whether or not another team is needed. A lot of times, sometimes there are multiple teams on calls depending if it's a busy weekend, so that's kind of how the lines of communication happen. So we always want to stress that you want to call 911. We don't want you to call a friend, call a family member. So always try to call 911 first. If you don't have cell service, New Hampshire does support text 911. So you could try doing that as well. Sometimes you're able to hit a satellite. With these inReaches, they do have an SOS functionality. Kim has actually used it herself, which will get you to help as well. And
it goes to Texas.
It goes to Texas. Yeah, so
It
it is outsourced, and they will get it to local dispatch, who then will kind of start that line of communication as well.
And that can be tricky because when I had to place my call, I'm in an area out. I don't know if anybody's familiar with coming out of Bond. In the Bond Cliff area, there is no cell service whatsoever. So my only means of communication was obviously the SOS and then the messaging through there, and somebody from Texas messages right back. It takes a little while, even on Lincoln Woods coming out of there, for the signal to go through. So it's not instant, it does take a while, but then they were able to get back in touch with me, but it's all done through the messaging on the inReach, since there's no cell service. So that, we do have a lot of areas that don't have cell service, so
Yep.
that can be very time consuming.
So if you're thinking about a satellite, it's not sitting right above you, right, all the time. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, you're at the mercy of a ping. And I've actually been where she is, and I've looked at my GPS, and it has had me way over here, and I was right here. So it's not always 100% accurate, especially when you're under tree cover as well.
And that's where, like, if you do have to place a call and you don't have cell phone service, or if you do have cell phone service, anybody that has the iPhone, and I think Android has it too, but Android, you have to download the compass. If you pull up your iPhone or Android and you download a compass, on the compass will give you coordinates, and those coordinates are best to give to 911, or if you can put them into the Garmin. If my Garmin inReach now, since I've had to use my SOS, I now have it automatically send my coordinates on every message.
Mm-hmm.
But even those can bounce sometimes, but your phone should give you pretty accurate, so you can also use that. If you pull up the compass, it'll show you. And Android, you can download a compass, so in that scenario, you can give them those coordinates.
Yep. So that's important. You always want to kind of let them know, even approximate. You know, if you can't get any of that, I'm hiking on this trail and I'm in this town, or I think I'm in this town. I'm hiking this mountain, because if you give a mountain some information is better than no information, because we have nothing to go on if we don't know where approximately you are. So we're gonna go over to fishing.
Okay, so Fish and Game, so we're the lead agency in the state to organize any search and rescue that's off-road. We have a lot of other tasks, so our primary is law enforcement for fishing and hunting laws. We stock fish with fisheries, we stock pheasants with wildlife. We're very diverse, and it all depends, OHRV activity, especially in Coas County during the summertime, and then all our snowmobiling in the wintertime and whatnot. But search and rescue is a huge part of it, and we are the lead agency, but we don't do all of it by any means. So we use a lot of different groups, and there's okay, here it is. A bunch of different volunteer groups in the state, and of course we work directly, being part of District 2 with Lakes Region SAR here. So most of the actual lifting is done by volunteers, which is pretty incredible. We'll send usually a district lieutenant, so the state's broken up into 6 different districts. Each one has a lieutenant and a sergeant, and the lieutenant and the sergeant will run the show, and then coordinate with other CEOs going up and call different volunteer groups based on how many people we need to carry out a person, or look for that missing person, or whatever the incident is off trail. So we're self-funded. We get $1 from each boat registration, OHRV registration, and that sort of thing that goes towards the search and rescue fund. And then recently, in the last
I think 2015 was
15,
it? 2015.
they came up with the voluntary hike safe card, and that's just a funding mechanism to help fund search and rescue in New Hampshire, because it is pretty expensive, even though quite a bit is done by volunteers. So there's a $25 voluntary hike safe card. It's basically, if you have a hunting or fishing license, or OHRV boat registration, you wouldn't be charged for something unless you're extremely reckless. If you're reckless, then they can still bill you for the mission. This covers you as far as if you're negligent, it would cover you in the cost of that. And if it's truly an accident, then you wouldn't be charged anyway. So, if you're on a hiking trail and you have a bee bites you and you have a reaction and you need assistance, you wouldn't get billed for that. But if you're up there in sandals in the summertime, now you're negligent. That's not a good idea. So you could get charged for that. And then if you're reckless, if you're up there in sandals in the wintertime, that's reckless, and you will get charged for that. So anyways, we have the New Hampshire Outdoor Council. They're a funding mechanism for all our search and rescue groups, so the search and rescue groups can do grants through them and get money for equipment and things that they need. So we run into a big variety of emergencies out there, and a lot of them are accidents. A lot of them are slips and falls, especially this time with wet leaves, or even the dry leaves are pretty slippery on our trails. We run into people who forget their headlamp, and they're surprised when the sun goes down again this evening, and they all they have is their phone, and they'll call us when the battery's at about 3%, and their flashlight's not really cutting it, and of course that's their mapping program, and that's their compass, and their light, and their source of help. So the last resort, they'll give us a call, and as long as you call 911 or text 911, we can get a GPS coordinate for you. It's not a big deal. We can either coordinate with, the lieutenant can either get directions down if it's a simple matter of a mix-up of direction, but a lot of times, we'll have to send someone up if it's like a light situation, just to bring them back down. So, we're really emphasizing hike safe in the 10 essentials, and there's some handouts up here too for you guys afterwards. But, gear list of things that you should really be carrying with you. Pocket knife, for obvious reasons. Rain jacket and pants. Hypothermia is a big issue, even during the summertime. But when you get wet and a little bit of wind condition, you can really get hypothermic. So rain jacket and pants. Fire starter. A lot of these people that are lost or simply run out of the light or whatever, if they have a fire starter, we tell them start a fire. It keeps them warm. It keeps them entertaining, gives them something to do, it relaxes them, and it's comforting, and it helps us lead us to them. As we can smell the smoke from a ways off, we can see the flames from a ways off. So fire starter, a basic first aid kit, of course a whistle for signaling, headlamps and flashlights, and with any of these things, like backups are essential. So we'll carry multiple headlamps in case the bulb goes out or batteries die, with spare batteries, so you always have that backup. And then plenty of water and food, obviously. Warm clothing, you should always have dry socks, a fleece of some sort, some way to keep warm. It's amazing the difference between civilization level and mountaintops. You get up there, it's I've been in the mountains a lot, and it's still always surprising when how different the two environments can be. And then of course the compass, and the compass on the phone doesn't cut it, because when the battery dies on your phone, after it's been searching for signal all day, you're not going to have it. And then a map, and of course there's two key elements to this. The map's got to be of the area that you're in, and you have to know how the map and compass work. So if you're planning on going out, get a basic course in orienteering, and that'd be great. All right, so some stats for you guys. This is 2021. So Fishing Game was called on 182 missions. 132 of those were for hikers and climbers. We also go to kids that may be lost in neighborhoods, dementia patient that might wander off in an area, hunters, fishermen, you name it, anybody that's in the woods, but a lot of hikers, climbers. So that utilized 3,817.19 hours of fishing game man hours. And then there was an additional 137 calls that were just handled over the phone. And a lot of those were lieutenants at night or sergeants at night, and they were able to, just talk them down, or, say, hey, listen, I know your pinky really hurts, but you gotta walk out. So that's 137 of them. So.
True.
So the total cost for that was $235,000. Out of those 182 missions, only 19 of those were built. And of course, that's above my pay grade. I don't know how they choose necessarily. But this is the key element here for volunteer search and rescue teams. So out of the 182, volunteer teams were called 80 to 89 of those missions. So like I said, if it's just something simple like they don't have a headlamp, and the sun went down that night unexpectedly, the lieutenant will just send 2 COs up with an extra light and bring them down, and we don't call out a volunteer for that. But if we gotta carry someone out 2 miles, we're gonna need like 20, 30 people, and we're calling a lot of volunteers. So that's the 89 missions, and that consumed 4,816 hours of volunteer time. So, you know, we got 3,800 of paid time up top, and then 4,816 of volunteer hours. And then our funding mechanism, which, you know, the Hike Safe cards at $25 a piece, was, we sold 11,818 of those cards sold, so.
So going to the missions now, so a little bit, so when we get called out, the only way that we can respond to a call is Fish and Game has to call us. So as soon as Fish and Game calls us, then that's how we get activated. We can't have a friend call us and say, hey, I'm lost, can you guys come help me? We can't. They have to call 911, Fish and Game will deploy us. So when we get deployed from Fish and Game, we have 3 basic missions that it's gonna be. It's either gonna be a carry out, a hasty search, or a line search. Carry out is basically somebody's injured, we've gotta go up and we have to carry them out. Depending where they are, it could be anywhere from 1 mile, 0.7 miles, it could be, I think the longest carry out I've done is 5 miles. And I wanna say that was was it 10, I think it took us 10 hours. It might have been about 10-hour carry out. Because when you get to the scene, you have to hike up. So we had to hike up 5 miles to the patient. And I think on that carry, that was off of Whiteface, if anybody's familiar with that, and they were on the Rollins Trail. So we had to carry them from the Rollins over to the Dicey Mill and down Dicey Mills. And that was, I think we had about 43 people when we started that carry, and I think we fizzled down, because 5 miles is a long carry, and that's where he was saying that you really need a lot of people. I want to, is it 20 people per mile? Generally, it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to say.
So much
There's
depends on
factors.
terrain, and whether we can use the wheel and the weight of the patient, so.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. That's the one thing I ask anybody. If anybody ever has to place a 911 call, don't lie about your weight. We all know we'd rather be a different weight than we really are. But I can't tell you, we have phone calls saying, yeah, we have a 120-pound person, needs a carry, and that's kind of like we all run numbers and say, okay, well, this is how many people we need, and you get up there, it might be a 200-pound person. It's very, very different on the amount of resources and people that we need to get to the scene for a carry. So one of the carry-outs, like I said, we did, it was 5 miles, it was probably at least 10 hours by the time we got there, hiked in, and carried the patient out. And people do fizzle out, you get burnt out, it's a lot of work carrying. You generally have 6 people carrying at a time, sometimes you can only carry maybe 5 minutes, and you're having to swap out all the time, because it's a lot of work. They have since, in the last couple of years, really done a great job with enhancing the litter system. So we now have these arm handles that can go on. And I think with the arm handles, you can carry with 4 people. It makes it a little bit easier, but the handles kind of come out. And as we all know, trails aren't always as easy. And it's a lot of work, because as volunteers, when we're carrying out, the patient doesn't realize it, but we're constantly getting stuffed into rocks, stuffed into trees. We come out black and blue, and it's great. Fun times. It's great when we get a call and they're like a mile up, and it's like, yes, it could be a quick carry. Doesn't always happen though. And we've done ones where we have to carry up, so sometimes, I think Mount Major 2 years ago, that was like a carry up, and they were on the Boulder Trail, and they carried up for a short period, because it was easier to get them onto the.
Yeah, carry over.
Because depending on where it is, there's different options, whether if they need the Black Hawk to come. So sometimes you carry up, generally we carry down. Hasty search. So hasty search is usually going to be if we're going looking for a lost person, whether it be a missing child, anybody who's missing. In the hasty search, when generally we get to command splits us into teams, and that's where a lot of our GPS units and different things come into play, where we can then be dispersed into small teams and just go. And they just send you up trails, they send you down drainages. we're not always on trail, but the point of a hasty search is you wanna go make a lot of, you're pretty much, I don't wanna say going for speed, but you're making fast time. You're trying to scour, you're looking for clues, but you're wanting to move and try and see what kind of area you can cover. So, and with anybody who's lost, the sooner you call, the higher the chance of us finding somebody. So, the minute you guys have somebody missing or know somebody missing, notify authorities right away so that way we can get out looking. Line searching, my least favorite out of any. I think that's probably all of our least favorite.
Okay.
Do you like line searching?
No.
No. So,
I always try to find the person in the hasty search so we don't have to go to line
right.
search. Sure.
So if we don't find somebody in a hasty search, it then can turn into a line search where sometimes we can be out there for a couple days. Line searching is very, very tedious. It's a lot of work. Usually, if we're notified from Fish and Game, they need so many people, we show up, and it's usually, you plan on a full 8-hour day that you're gonna be out line searching. There's no way to tell what conditions you're line searching in, cause you don't even know. I mean, when we get there, they kinda give us our area, and you're not on trail. You're completely in the thick of the woods. I've had the privilege of line searching with Joe on several, and one of them, I think we covered 6 miles, and 3 miles of that was pricker bushes that was shoulder height.
Yeah.
So that was pretty miserable. I wasn't liking life that day. I don't think any of us were. It's a lot of work. So line searching it's a lot of work, but that's what we're gonna go. Line searching is super important. You really have to focus because that's where you're looking for any kind of clues, looking under trees, and you're hoping that you can find somebody. So those are the 3 different missions that we would get called to.
Yeah, as far as like line searching is very tedious and something that we do practice a lot. It seems like a simple thing to do, but if you're not standing in a line together and moving as a team and communicating, something might be missed. So it's very important and something we do practice a lot as a team, especially making sure that we're staying in a set, like, you know, we can't stay in a perfect line all the time because there's ledges and there's, you know, things on the trail, but it's something that we try to do a lot and practice a lot because we want people to be able to communicate with each other and be able to find those small clues. In our spring training, they actually hid playing cards for us, and that's what we kind of were finding on trail to be like, oh, I found the Queen of Hearts, or I found this, and they were hidden in various ways, and you would think, oh, I'm looking down, but unfortunately, you do need to look up as well because sometimes there are clues that are higher up that you're not always. Yes.
What are examples of clues?
It could be, so it depends on, when we're briefed at a mission, so when we get to command and usually somebody, it's usually a lieutenant or sergeant is gonna give us a description. It could be what the person was wearing that day. They've been known to like apples or different things, so you don't always know what you're looking for. So we can come across different things on trail and we call it into command, and we'll be like, one of the ones that my husband and I did together, we were on a hasty search and it was just him and I on trail, and we got sent up, I think it was either hedgehog or potash. And we were looking for a missing person, and we found an article of clothing hanging on a tree. So we called into command, let them know, we mark coordinates because they want the coordinates, and that's where, you know, your GPS is also coming to play because you're marking coordinates. You radio it in. Usually, depending what you're doing, you might stay put for a minute while he notifies the family and says, hey, like, is this an item that maybe they would have been wearing? And generally we will bring the item down with us. So you don't always know what you're looking for. You can add to that.
Yeah, and a big thing is tracks too. So we are always looking for traps. So like muddy areas or swampy areas where they might be leaving footprints, or you know, along stream beds or something like that. But anything that may potentially lead us in the right direction.
I think on our training, obviously we're in places where humans are a lot and people walk, and we actually found a bag of dog poop, so we called it in because we didn't know if the person that was missing in our training had a dog with them, and so that was something we called in. They didn't have a dog, they just happened to be on trail that someone left behind. But anything really that you think, oh, this might be, you know, something that might add to the case or the missing person. So yeah.
So line searches is something that we do practice every year. whether it be through, like she said, placing cards out there or part of our training mission. So.
Do you
it's
do many of those?
many line searches? I think so.
Yeah, quite a few. We go to a lot of missing people, but you know, it's only one tool that we're using, so we're using helicopters, we're using drones, we're using K-9 teams, you know, police officers, firefighters driving roads, checking neighbors, surveillance videos, you know, businesses or whatever. So there's a lot of avenues, but line searching is, you know,
The-
a big one.
Yeah, cause I think one of the ones we did a couple summers ago was, the one, missing hiker that was missing for 5 days while he was trying to do a bonds traverse, or not a bond, a penny loop
Yeah.
for staff. So when we were doing that one, that was 5 days of volunteers on that. So, and that, we had the Black Hawk, I think 3 of those days we had the Black Hawk that could fly, cause I think there was a couple days it rained. So there's, you're doing a lot of different things, but on that one, it was day 5 was the last day of searching. But then we were lucky and he was found, so after 5 days, I had a happy ending. So we like those happy endings. So, so we do a lot, but the line searching, that even though we were on day 5, they had already done, they still were sending out hasty teams, even though we were already that many days in, because you're still just trying to cover as much area, but you have teams that are line searching and hasty searching at the same time, just to cover as much area as we can. So that kinda goes through that.
So I'm gonna cover what to do before help arrives. So I'm gonna cover just a definition of what wilderness medicine is. I'm gonna go over why it's so difficult for us to sometimes get to if you are injured, and then just go over some things that are helpful to have in your first aid kit, some additional things that you might wanna add, and then some tips and tricks as well. So wilderness medicine is termed as basically you are not urban, you are not within an hour of a hospital, right? So you're not gonna be readily available to get medical treatment. The reason that the wilderness medicine is so difficult and it's different than urban medicine is that some of the rules that are in urban medicine don't apply in wilderness medicine. You're gonna do things that you might not always do in an urban setting because you're gonna be able to get help faster. When you're in the wilderness, you're not thinking about getting help fast, you're just trying to make sure that you actually survive so that help can come to you and get you. So some of the things that make it difficult are just distance and time, so notifications not always really available, as Kim explained with the Garmin InReach, that interaction probably took maybe an hour, if not longer, between. Yeah, and then if you don't have cell service, things like that. So someone in your group might actually have to leave you and find help on foot. You know, obviously if you're only 2 of you, don't leave each other, but if there's a group of 3, maybe one person that can try to get help. The environment, so if you're in poor conditions and that's how you got hurt, well, your rescuers are also gonna be in poor conditions, so just, we're all human, and so if it's bad weather, we're also gonna be in that as well, so that might slow us down. Terrain, so if it's deep snow, if there's ice, you know, shoulder seasons are very hard, so that springtime and then that time between fall and winter are very difficult. Wet leaves in the spring, post-holing, with traction, so we might think we only need micro spikes, but we need crampons and snowshoes and ice axes. It just depends on the terrain. Equipment and resources, so is the group prepared to come get you? Are you prepared to be out there? So it might be that you don't have the materials that you need to be able to stay out there for a long time. So that makes our situation a little bit more dire to get to you as well. And then just the specialized training. So not everyone is well equipped with map and compass. Sometimes their forecasting skills, weather changes very quickly. So things like that, biovac skills. And then as far as kind of check, call, care, so these are the steps. I actually made this slide for Girl Scouts, and I thought it was very helpful because it kind of simplified everything. So before you go to someone's aid, if you're in that party, you want to make sure, like, is the area safe? Am I safe? Are they safe? Do I feel safe? You know, environmental safety. Are there animals? Am I on a ledge? Am I in a bad spot? Can I move that person to a better area? Am I near running water? Are they wet? Are they off the ground? So like these are things that you want to start thinking about when you're out there with someone. What happened? So, did they fall? How far did they fall? Are they bleeding? Can I see them bleeding? Are they breathing? It sounds silly and simple, but when you're in a very hectic situation, you're not thinking straight. So it's just take a breath. All right, I'm okay. All right, now is Kim okay? Is she bleeding? Is she breathing? Can I see any broken bones? Like address the main things first. Once you know that everyone's safe, it might be serious, but everyone's safe at this time, call for help. Because then the more that you know about that person, the more that you can give to 911. So this is their age, this is their name. I know these allergies, I know this about them. All of the people that I hike with, I know that one girl I hike with has asthma and she has a low blood sugar issue. So if she's fainted, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give her food. I know that one friend is a diabetic. So you know about your hiking companions and you can relay that information. I don't know all the medications they're on. That's not always the most important thing, but knowing some things about them.
But if they are coherent and they can tell you
Right.
their medications, if you have something, write it down, even if you use your notepad, that way you can also relay it as well. In case there's something with their medications that maybe somebody's on the background looking at.
Yeah, high blood pressure, things like that. And then once you call for help, can you offer help to that person? So you don't need to be a medic to be able to give just simple first aid. So some of the contents that I suggest just having as a basic first aid kit are just some bandages, some roll gauze, adhesive bandages, gauze pads. Gauze pads are those big ones. Sometimes they say trauma kit on them. They can be used for a lot of things, so they can be unraveled, as simple as making a little, for a bloody nose, or even putting into a wound, wrapping. I also carry, as a woman, I carry tampons with me. I know Kim has a pad with her, so.
Those are, because either tampons or maxi pads, believe it or not, are one of the best things to use for stop the bleed. So
Yeah.
if you come across somebody who's really bleeding, I tell you that those pads weigh next to nothing, and they're gonna do the best job stopping a bleed.
Medical tape, instant cold pack. It's not the highest thing on my list for an instant cold pack. Sometimes it's just nice having. I was hiking in the Grand Canyon, someone had heat exhaustion, an ice pack was able to bring down that heat exhaustion a little bit. Not necessary to always have in your kit, but if you're going into a warm climate situation, it might be good to have. Gloves that are non-latex. There are a lot of people that have latex allergies. You don't want to cause another reaction. Compression wrap. So an antihistamine, so Benadryl, chewable. I am allergic to pistachios. It might not be something that's very common, but I always have Benadryl. I keep it in my purse, and the chewable will allow you, if someone is not able to talk, or you can crush it up, put it in some water, maybe get it down them, and it will absorb a little bit quicker than having someone try to swallow a pill. Tourniquet, it's not something that's necessary, that's an extra. You can make a tourniquet out of multiple things. There are triangle bandages. Kim has one on her desk. I actually have one in my first aid kit, so you guys can come up after and look at all this stuff.
And with the tourniquets, if you're using, whether it be paracord, a strap, or anything, there's so many sticks out in the woods. You tie your knot, you can put,
Yeah.
you
Or
tie a
pen.
loose knot, a pen, if you don't have a pen, but a stick out there, and you can put a stick in it to get yourself to be able to tighten it more.
Trekking poles come apart. You can take
Yep.
the top part of your trekking pole. It's a little bit longer, but if you don't want to leave someone and that's what you got in your hand, you can use that.
I'm gonna go back quick to the compression wrap. That is something that is in every backpack, even if I'm just, Piper, gun stock, and Belknap are my backyard. So I often will go up during a lunch break or just go up for a quick jaunt up there, and I never go anywhere without a compression wrap. I have been on trail twice and snapped my ankle, and that compression wrap, within seconds, that goes on and I can self-rescue. I pop an ibuprofen, couple ibuprofens, and I put that on, and it will help. I don't suggest anybody snap their ankle on trail, but the compression wrap can be a lifesaver. Wrap it instantly, don't think about it, just get it on right away.
can also be used as a tourniquet as well, or putting pressure for a wound. And then a pen light, if you have one, it's not necessary, but if someone falls, it's just being able to see if their eyes are dilating or not, or if they're staying dilated. Antibiotic ointment, tweezers. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten a splinter on trail, just grabbing a tree, or it's disgusting, but where hikers, a toenail goes into your toe, or just something that you want to be able to pull something out of. I've stubbed my toe on a rock, had a rock lodge itself into my heel. So there are various weird things that can happen, so having tweezers is just always helpful. It's just another tool. And then I always carry electrolytes, and I carry electrolytes because I usually have them in my water, but if someone just has water with them and you're noticing that they're sluggish, or they're slurring their speech, or they're just acting strange, that's the first thing that I would do as an EMT, would say, okay, what have you had that has salt in it? And if they're like, oh, I haven't had anything, I haven't had any trail mix, my first thing would be like, okay, let's get you some electrolytes, because we want to give you some of those vitamins, those B vitamins back in there, and also give you some salt. And then as far as a wilderness first aid kit add-on, you could do a splint. We actually have a SAM splint right here. If you wanna.
Yeah, so the SAM splints, they weigh like next to nothing. I don't know, anybody here familiar with SAM splints? So they roll up really nice. They're very, very flimsy. These things can come in handy to any injury. You can roll it. If you happen to injure your ankle, you can totally put it right over your foot, and it will act, and you can wrap it that way. You can, if you happen to get an arm injury, you can kind of mold it to your arm, and depending what you carry for you, you can take whatever clothing items that you have in your backpack, and you can kind of make yourself a sling with it too. They weigh next to nothing. It's great. Even if you come across somebody who's injured, you might be able to offer assistance to them. So these things are great.
Where do you get them?
Amazon, like anywhere.
REI has them.
Yeah.
Tick remover, blister care. I would say blister care primary if possible. I am very mad at myself because I hiked Garfield on Sunday, and normally I always have blister band-aids. They're by Band-Aid. If you have a blister and it hasn't popped yet, you put one of those on and it will actually heal the blister from the top layer down into your skin, and you just leave it on until it's there. Didn't have one with me, and I ended up just using a Band-Aid, and I actually had to cancel my hike yesterday because I got a blister so bad on my toe. So that's something I definitely would recommend having in there. Extra food, obviously it's part of the 10 essentials. A whistle. Whistles are, so a lot of backpacks, especially Osprey, will have a whistle right on your chest strap. If you don't have one, I actually have, this is something I bought on Amazon, and I love this because it's a fire starter and it's dry, so if this got wet, it would still work. It also has a compass on it, and it has a whistle, so it's kind of like a 3-in-1, and it came in a 2-pack, and I think they were like $5. So I keep this actually in my first aid kit, and I had to strike this when I was in Wyoming, so it was helpful for me to have it in my first aid kit because it wasn't something I was expecting to need in the Wyoming wilderness, but I did, so it was good.
We have whistles up here, so everybody can feel free to grab them. It's a whistle, there's a compass, there's a signaling, and then inside it's waterproof, so you can put waterproof matches and a strike plates on the out. So these are in up here too.
Other things that might be helpful are just extra batteries, or an extra headlamp. So I was on a hike with my friend. We were doing Caps Ridge on Jefferson, and we were coming down, we were doing sunset, so it was becoming late out. And two hikers came down, and they were kind of a little bit emotional. You could tell that they were a little distressed, and they were explaining to us that they ended up taking a wrong turn, or they did another trail that they weren't expecting, so they were doing a loop, and when they were coming back, they were coming down a lot later than they had thought, and they did not have headlamps with them. And we were at a part where you really did need a headlamp because you're going to be heading under tree line, and when you get into tree line, it's actually naturally darker than it is if you were out in the open. So luckily I had extra batteries, my hiking partner had an extra headlamp. We just said, okay, we'll give you one of our headlamps, because we didn't want to hike down with them, we weren't ready to go down yet. We felt that they were okay to be able to hike still, and we just said, this is my license plate, and just leave it on our car. We actually met them in the parking lot, and she broke down crying, and she was so appreciative that we were able to help them with that. So it's just, sometimes it's not always for you, but somebody else, and we're all one community, so it's just always about helping other people. So some of the tips and tricks, Kim already went over the SAM splint. I always hike in a baseball cap, or I have a baseball cap with me. You can actually fold the brim down, and you can have the brim on your neck as a neck splint. So if it was ever a case where you fell or someone fell and you don't know if they have a neck injury and you didn't have a SAM splint with you, you could use that baseball cap to just kind of stabilize their neck, because they're not going to be able to move down or side to side.
Thermalite pad.
Thermalite pad, yep.
So the thermalite pad, I don't know, a lot of people probably carry these, maybe people do carry a little seat pad that you can sit on. So these are great also for any kind of injuries that you have, because you can wrap your injury or wherever you're hurt. Same with your, part of your body that might need a little bit extra. So these have multiple uses that you can use them for too. And they weigh like nothing. So anything you carry that you're looking for, you really want to find multiple uses for. So
And the
you
other
can carry the Samson, but this also would do the same thing.
The other thing with those is when someone's hurt and it's cold out, or even if it's not cold out, you want to think about, you want a barrier between the ground and them, right? Or you want them to be as comfortable as possible. I actually took an avalanche course, and we buried the instructor in a pile of snow, and he sat on my pad, and he said his butt has never been warmer. And he was like in that pile of snow for about an hour to an hour and a half. So they are very good at keeping you from the elements, and it's just an extra way of just making sure someone's comfortable. We actually will pack someone with our trainings in the litters with them too.
Right.
Like, because you think about when you're laying on your back, you have that curve. So just having that extra padding, or even behind your knees, those areas that are just kind of get a little bit uncomfortable.
And if you ever come across somebody who's injured or that you're trying to give assistance or help to, try and use all the items out of their backpack before you use your items. See what they have. Chances are you're not going to get the items back, so you'd rather use the items in their pack first. But to Ashley's point, first thing is get something underneath the patient. If you can get something underneath them, to get them off of the ground so they stay warmer. I've been on two where I've been like first on scene, or it was with somebody I was with, and the first thing I always do, because they're usually sweaty, is get them into dry clothes, because you know that you're going to be out there for a while waiting for a rescue. So their clothes are going to be damp naturally from sweating, so I usually try and make sure that we get them in dry clothes right away.
So the other thing too is always you want to make sure you're protecting yourself first before helping someone else. So you want to think about barriers, bodily fluids. You might not always have gloves with you, but a lot of us have plastic bags that we put our stuff in. So if you don't have gloves, you have a glove now. So you can use a plastic bag, get creative. Sometimes people use sandwich, like bread bags. People have them with them. They'll put their feet in them to cross rivers and stuff. But just, make sure you're protecting yourself before helping someone else. If they're, coughing or whatever, we live in the time of COVID, so, maybe wear a mask, sneezing, things like that. Wash your hands, have hand sanitizer. I carry wipes with me. And the other thing that's very helpful is glow sticks, so Kim's gonna go over that.
Yes, so glow sticks, believe it or not. You go to the store, I'm sure some people have seen these glow sticks that are in almost every hiking, camping section. So they call these the glow sticks 12-hour green. They're green. Great to give you light if you need it right away, but if you're nighttime, Blackhawk can't see green, so it won't help you at nighttime. So if you're lost, best to carry a glow stick that is either yellow, orange, and red are the only colors that the Blackhawks can see. So we do have glow sticks that are the right color, so you guys are more than welcome to grab one. So if it's nighttime, it's so thick that Blackhawks can't see through everything, but if you are able to activate a glow stick, put it on a string, and be able to swing it, they're going to be able to, it's just another tool for them to be able to help find you.
And then I was actually in Yellowstone, and I found the bandanas up here as an example. I bought it for my friend who's actually here tonight. And it just gives over some like wilderness tips and tricks. They sell them online. They're really helpful. A bandana is another thing that can be used for multiple uses. Tourniquet can be used to patch a wound. It can be used as a hanky, really multiple uses, but it will also help you too because it'll have text on it. So, and they're not very heavy, so it's just another thing to have with you. Do you want our guess?
Yeah, so that pretty much sums up that part. I'm gonna have a guest come up. It was actually somebody that we rescued last year. So, you wanna come on up? This way you can hear from somebody else's perspective who's actually who's been rescued.
Yeah, so I just found out about this meeting yesterday, but I'm excited to meet Kim. I see her adventures and Littlefoot's adventures and her husband's all the time. So I was 3 hikes away from finishing my 48, and I'm a teacher in Belmont, and kind of threw a night hike together, a sunset up Chicora, which I've been dying to do for forever, it seemed. So 2 buddies were going to go up there with me. So we were going to do the Piper Trail. I'd never been up Chicora. So when I got there with my buddy to the trailhead, I was shocked. I'm like, oh my God, there's toilets here. This is great. So I went and tried to use the bathroom before I got on trail. And I couldn't go. And I realized much later that night that that should have been a red flag. Like something's going on with your body because that's very unlike me. But anyway, I didn't mention it to my buddies. We were waiting on one friend. He arrived in the car and we hit the trail. Going up to the summit, probably about, 7 to 10 times, I kept feeling the urge to go to the bathroom. I would stop off trail and I couldn't go. And at that point, they knew something was up because I never pee on trail really. Like one of my buddies is like, we keep track of how many times he pees, but I just don't do that. So they didn't think anything of it. I didn't really think anything of it. I wasn't in any pain. It was just annoying. So I get up to the summit, and all of a sudden, I'm not feeling good at all. They're enjoying their sunset moment, and I'm over to the side, like starting to realize that I'm not in a good spot, and that summit was extremely rocky, and I'm thinking, I gotta get out of here. So we headed down. I did tell them, I go, guys, I don't feel right. So we headed down, and at this point, we all had headlamps on, and I didn't get too far from the summit, maybe 7/10 of a mile, and I just collapsed on like some ledge. I could not go on anymore. I had this like stabbing pain in my side, and I just told them, I go, just give me a few moments. And again, very, very unlike me, I love to run down trails, And so after, I don't even know how long, I told Kim when I just got here tonight, I was like in and out of consciousness. At one point I was vomiting, and then I'm shivering, and I'm sweating, and the pain is not going away, it's just intensifying. And so I think like an hour and a half might have passed, and they said to me, if you can't get up, we should call 911. And I remember them saying, calling 911, and I'm like, oh my God, this can't be happening to me. And I remember saying to them, I can't move. I literally at this point, I'm like laying in like spiky bushes and still puking. And so they made the call, and thank God we had self-service because we didn't have the Garmin InReach yet. We now do. So anyway, a huge team was put together. I really don't remember much of being carried out. But I do remember one guy, the guy I think that got there first, he reached down to me, or over me in the litter basket, and he goes, are you doing all right? I go, I gotta pee. And he goes, well, just pee. I go, yeah, okay. So nothing had changed. The whole hike I had to pee, but I couldn't, So I just remember getting down, and they used the wheel, and it's not an easy trail out, and then they put me in an ambulance. I went to Conway, and it was kidney stones. And I had never had a kidney stone in my life. I didn't know the warning signs. My dad had them multiple times, but it was just excruciating pain, and I was just so thankful that the search and rescue team was able to come out, and because I was not getting off that mountain. I would have, I don't know, my buddies would have had to try to carry me, which would not have been pretty. And we were relatively prepared. We had multiple headlamps. I remember being stuffed into a biggie sack of one of my buddies, and they put the seating pad under me because I was freezing cold from the rocks I was laying on. And then one of the buddies who lives in Mass, he ended up like cuddling next to me, and so to this day it's like a standing joke. Like we just did a Zevon's Traverse 3 days this past weekend, and we were gonna stay in Geo shelter. We did, and so obviously it was sent out like if anybody gets cold, Matt's the best cuddler. So anyway, that was my experience. So I jumped at the chance to come tonight. I wanted to hear about the organization, and they just do a lot of good. And firm believer in the Hike Safe card, and just really thankful that we have this organization to help people.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Part of why I wanted Keith to be able to come and speak also is a lot of people have a misperception that everybody that gets rescued is ill prepared, and that's not the case. So a lot of people are like, well, if something's seriously going wrong, they're like, no, I don't want to call, I don't want to call, I don't want to be one of those people. Things happen though. Accidents happen to very well prepared people. He's a well prepared hiker. His team he hikes with, they know what they're doing. So it's just accidents happen. It happens.
Yeah,
So it's a perfect example that accidents happen.
Wrong
If you-
place, wrong
Yeah,
time.
and if you need help, you gotta place the call. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, that's part of who we are and what we do. So, thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
So now, questions. So the floor is you. In case anybody has some questions they wanna ask, we're more than happy to answer any questions. If you wanna ask questions to Joe, Joe's more than happy to answer questions too.
I'll try to figure out an answer.
What are, if you wanted to try to volunteer, what are some red flags that you wouldn't be able to volunteer? Like if I wanted to volunteer and become part of your search and rescue, what
That's a good question. I don't know as if we really so for volunteers, there's some information on our website, or depending where you live, there's other organizations as well. But there's an application, and if you go through the application, we're basically looking for people who are prepared, people who know how to hike, are familiar with trails. You don't have to be familiar with every trail that's out there. We go through an application process. We have a board of 7. The board goes through the applications once the applications come in, and we'll kind of vet through it and kind of see whether or not we want to invite them to a shakedown hike. If there's something that stands out as a red flag on the application, then we would email back and say, well, if you're saying, well, I hike, twice a year, that might be a red flag. So we really want to see somebody who's out and about. I don't even want to say on a regular basis, because we have people that are on our team that don't hike every weekend, and we have other people that hike 2-3 times a week. It just really depends. So, and then we invite them for a shakedown hike, and we take them on a shakedown hike, and we try to have at least 3 or 4 members from our team go to the shakedown hike, and we kind of all evaluate on the shakedown hike, and then after, if you pass the shakedown hike, then you would be notified if you've made the team. So, I don't know if that kind of answers it. There's not like, I would say the only big red flag is if, somebody doesn't really hike.
I didn't know if you had to do a certain pace.
No, because the biggest thing with pace is, and we say it all the time, when we're going on rescues, we don't want to be, not all of us, I can't run up a trail. I'm not a trail runner by any means. But by the time you get to the patient, you need to have some energy, because you could have a long night or quite a few hours ahead of you. So, you hike your own pace, you get to the patient, and you kind of can assess, when we're doing the shakedown hikes. So I think our shakedown hike is about 7.5 miles, and we usually finish in about 4.5-5 hours is generally what we do. And they're at night. Our shakedown hikes are we always start our shakedown hikes. We start our shakedown hikes when it's light out, but they don't end until about 9, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. And we do that on purpose, because they generally don't call us when it's light out, or we're generally going into nighttime. So that's one of our biggest things. We want to be able to make sure that people are adequate to be able to watch their foot and be able to hike at night. And their gear.
What's your motivation for doing this? It's incredible how helpful this is to all of us, and I appreciate it. why do you, what's your why for,
What's my why?
For being a volunteer.
My why is to give back. I love the hiking community. I think the hiking community is fabulous. It's obviously a recreation sport that I love, and I've seen a lot of people that get injured out there that are not reckless. I think one of my biggest whys is one of our very first calls. We formed our organization. By the time we were up and going, we had a training. Our first training was in May. The day after we had our very first training was Mother's Day. We just had our first whole team training. I don't remember what it was, but it was the day before Mother's Day. It was a Saturday. Mother's Day was Sunday. 6:30 in the morning, my phone rang, and it was a call out. My husband looks at me, and he's like, "It's your day. What do you want to do?" And I said, "It's a missing child. We're going." There wasn't any hesitation with me. I think we were at Moosalaki that day for about 12 hours. And it was a hard day, and I think a lot of us felt a pit in our stomach when we had to go home that night and we hadn't found him. And to have the family and the parents all arrive there and cry to you, and I mean, you see it a lot too, and there's a lot of emotions behind that. So if you can even help bring one person back. I mean, I've got 3 children. I have 2 granddaughters. One of my granddaughters hikes with me all the time. And I couldn't imagine not having the support of volunteers to be able to help with that. So, Moosalaki guy, he was found.
I was just gonna say.
So, Joe found him.
Our team found
Your
them.
team found him. And he was out there. He was missing for 3. He was going on 3 days.
3 days. Yeah.
3 days.
Was he hiking with a group? And he got
Oh yeah. But he turned around, and this was in May, so Moosalaki still had snow. It was really brutal conditions to line search, and you couldn't put snowshoes on because you had mud, and then you had a patch of snow, and then you had mud, so it didn't matter. People, it goes on, everybody goes viral with everything, and they're like, how does somebody lose their shoes out there? Why'd they take their shoes off? How could somebody be found without shoes? I know exactly how. I was out in the terrain. You step in the wrong spot, the mud, you get suctioned in. It's very easy. And nobody knows the backstories to everything that you hear on the news and the media. So there's a lot of backstory that goes behind it. So that's my why.
thank you.
I've done it for 3 years now, so I'll stay doing it as long as I can. So.
My way. I've been that person that's needed help. I actually didn't get help, but I know what it feels like to be out there, lost, not prepared, scared, screaming for help, of relying on other people on trail. And after going through and getting my wilderness EMT and getting licensed in the state, it was something that I wanted to give back to the community because I feel like I can relate a little bit. I also like educating a lot. I like teaching people about things that I've experienced, that I've seen, things that I do to prepare. I think knowledge is power, so the more that I can share with the community, and it doesn't matter about age. I mean, everyone learns at every age. I like to be able to do that, so I do help with Girl Scouts, so I've done adult trainings too. That's my life.
Yeah. So I think, and everybody's why is obviously very very, very different. So, but yeah. And we all have full-time, like I'm full-time, I'm a mortgage loan originator, so I work all hours, weekends, it doesn't matter. We all kind of fit this into what we do. So, it can be a pretty big time commitment, some weeks more than others. So, any other questions? All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you for attending.